So let's talk about vocal mixing, because it is like all other mixing and it's not. It is like other mixing in terms of channel stripping things, which we spend quite a bit of time in our Mixing Foundations class doing, learning how to EQ, compress, use reverb, compression, saturation, all of the basics. So that's the same. Whether you're channel stripping a kick drum or snare or vocal, you're going to proceed in a logical way, and you're looking for a finished result that you can then put reverb on and introduce in the mix. But there are a couple things about vocals that are special to vocals, although that you can find them elsewhere in your channel stripping of other instruments. But one of them is that vocals are recorded in a room of some kind with a microphone of some kind. And when you record things in a room, you get room resonances, and sometimes they're not musical, and we want to take them out first. We like to do reductive EQ even before saturation a lot of the time, because of the way saturation interacts with fundamentals. And that is, the loudest low frequency harmonic, it wouldn't be the harmonic, it would actually be the fundamental, low tone. If it's not an intentional fundamental, it's going to send your saturation into a crazy place. So room resonances are, rooms are like drums, and they have a tone to them. The shape of the room, the size of the room, and they do resonate. So we like to take these room resonances out. Sometimes you'll hear, well, I'm not gonna tell you what it is. We'll listen for it. So we're gonna start with vocals after they're well recorded, and we're gonna do a little bit of reductive EQ before we saturate, EQ, compress, filter, add reverb, and all the rest of the stuff we're gonna do. So first, this is a New York City up-and-coming artist named Juliana singing Amy Winehouse's "You Know I'm No Good." And this was not recorded in a very expensive studio. I think this was recorded in an apartment in the East Village with a simple microphone and a relatively simple setup. So this is more of not your super high-end studio recording. This is more your let's get it done in my, living room style. So let's just listen to a piece of it first.
And you sniffed me out like I was Tanqueray, 'cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good.
Right, nice, clean vocal recording, not fancy, not a big room. You can tell usually sort of forensically what size of the room, or if it was in a vocal booth with a glass. But this is just a sort of a regular old living room. And she played guitar. She played the guitar first, and you hear a little bit of guitar bleed. A little bit of guitar bleed in the headphones. When we solo things, especially vocals, you're going to hear all kinds of little imperfections, and the more we compress it, and the more we seem to brighten it up with EQ, sometimes these little foibles, these little problems rise to the surface. But that's what we have Isotope RX for. Really good. They have a wonderful new, relatively new algorithm that takes out mouth noise, and it works quite well. And yeah, little headphone bleeds, little things like that, stuff you will not hear in the mix, but you do hear when you work in solo. So since everyone loves FabFilter, let's start with FabFilter. And we're going to start with FabFilter in natural phase mode. At the school, we've been going through a lot of, trying to figure out, when do you use linear phase? Well, usually on phase correlated signals, and that's another discussion. But for the most part, when you're using FabFilter Pro Q2, you want to be in natural phase mode, right? This minimizes phase shift and unwanted tonal shifts, and it works incredibly good, actually. So we're going to start with linear phase, and we're going to do some reductive EQ. And as we do reductive EQ, we're going to start with the lows and move to the highs. There might be things you cut in the middle, in the lows, maybe in the highs. The highs we usually use a de-esser. But to go from low to high with reductive EQ is really logical, because you don't know if you need to brighten something up until you cut the unnecessary lows.
Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray.
And, of course, one of the things we love about FabFilter is that it's so incredibly visual. And here we can see formants and we can see harmonics. And there sort of is a big consistent harmonic between, whatever it is, 300-ish. And then there's another one, sort of an octave up, 600-ish. And then there's another one, an octave up. So we're not sure what these are, and we'll find out because we'll sort of solo these harmonics or fundamental in the harmonics. And we'll sort of have to make a judgment call of whether they're musical or whether they're not musical, and we'll deal with it. But the first step is a low cut, right? Cut out any rumble. We don't want subs on our vocals. We love subs on our 808s and sub basses, but we don't love subs on our vocals. So we're going to cut those. Sort of, we can see them. Sometimes you can't really hear them. But let's make a first low cut there on the vocal.
'Cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good. Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray.
So you saw what I did. The first thing I did as an engineering move is I just overdid it, right? And all of those people who take mixing foundations, not only do you learn compression, EQ, saturation, reverb, and all that good stuff, but you learn how to arrive at the right answer according to you. I always say it's my technique, my workflow, but your taste. And to quickly get to the right answer, we exaggerate right away to be like, what's too much, whether we're EQing, compressing, saturating, whatever. We overdo it the first move. We actually distort it on purpose. And then we try to get close to the right answer, and then we type. We do a lot of typing. All of my favorite engineers do a lot of typing. And it's very, very precise. So we go extreme, we get close, we type, and then we bypass, back and forth. If you try to find the right answer, whatever you're doing, compressing, EQing, and you go really slowly and make really slow, tiny changes, it's really hard to hear. Right? It's really hard to make a critical decision in that way. We're better at making abrupt changes, A, B, before and after, or do I like this or that? So you learn how to engineer as well as learning the plugins and the philosophy and all that stuff. But this is if you're not engineering in this way, this is the way that you can very quickly get to the right answer.
'Cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew.
So that's what we did. We exaggerated, we got close, we typed back and forth, and we bypassed, lots of bypassing. Now, sometimes, like I said, to get to the right answer quickly, you're going to go back and forth between two things. So here I have 120 and 80, right? These are two popular different places to filter the vocal. And now I can use the back and forward arrows inside FabFilter. All the FabFilter plugins have this to jump back and forth between two settings to see which one I like better.
Hello, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew I would. And I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good. Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray.
So I've decided on my cut here, and one thing about filtering vocals, but this goes for anything. If you can't really hear the difference when you go in and out of bypass, it doesn't mean that you're wrong. I'll say that again, because it's people have to wrap their head around that. If you set a filter to cut to a rumble cut on a vocal, and you go in and out of bypass and you don't hear a difference, it doesn't mean that you're wrong. You don't have to cut it so hard that there's a big difference when you filter the lows out. That's incorrect, right? Just because you can't hear the difference doesn't mean that that vocal isn't benefiting from that cut, right? Because all of that muck and your mix, if you have 24 tracks, 48 tracks, and you can see it very clearly in FabFilter, if you religiously cut those lows, that times 24 or 36 is going to add up. And if you don't cut it, it's going to add up. If you do cut it, it won't add up. But if you don't cut it, it's going to add up and clog your speakers, right? These slow-moving, super low frequency rumble frequencies will add up to make your mix mud. So don't feel that you have to cut so aggressively that when you go in and out of bypass, you need to hear it. If you don't hear it, it means you're actually doing a good thing. You're taking out unnecessary lows without thinning out the vocal too much. Unless you're going for like a cell phone vocal or something like that. So now let's look at this first resonance, and we can add an instance of a bell, and then we can listen inside of it with the little headphone icon. This is a very cool technique.
'Cause you're my fellow, my guy.
So there was a good question in the chat, which was, is it better to EQ vocals with or without the music? And the answer is both. I think you start in solo and then you make adjustments with the music playing. I think you do both, actually. So now we use the little headphone icon, and we can solo inside here, and we can listen to these resonances. If the cue is too wide when you're doing this technique, it's not specific enough. If the cue is too thin, then everything sounds bizarre and weird. So you kind of need these sort of medium-ish cues. And we'll rewind there and just take a look at that again.
And your skull t-shirt, you say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray. 'Cause you're my fellow, my guy.
So we found this resonance, and it's sort of it sounds a little bit like glass, like there could be a window. It also could just sounds like sheetrock apartment, just sounds like a room resonance. So just like, when you're going to go out on a date and you looked in the mirror and you found you had a pimple right before your date, don't carve a big hole in your face with your fingernails. You're not going to look better going out on that date, right? So don't do crazy extreme resonance reductions. Don't use a notch filter, or you'll make for a very filtered, funny sound. Be gentle when you deal with these resonances. You still want it to sound round and natural. You don't want it to sound comb filtered or whatever. I think you have excellent skin, Elton.
Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today?
Can you guys hear when that thing gets pulled down too far? It just has a kind of a very strange filtered sound to it that no longer sounds warm and natural. So that's an example right there of going too far. You're going to try to sort of zero in on the resonance, but the resonance moving around a little bit too. So you're not going to exactly get it perfect, right? You're going to sort of just minimize a little bit of that resonance.
And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray, 'cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore.
So you do a couple dB, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, but usually 1, 2, or 3, and you play with the width to just sort of zero in on that resonance.
I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good. Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was
And you see we're very gently just cleaning up this recording before the rest of the channel stripping, just trying to be light-handed about it. So let's take a look at this other resonance, the next one up, and just see if we can maybe mellow it out a little bit.
Gray, 'cause you're my fellow, my girl. You tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good. Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt.
So usually I take out 1 or 2 of those, and I usually stop around 1.5K or something. Then if there's other things in the upper mids and the highs, I usually like to flatten those out with the de-esser rather than put a static cut in. I like to deal with the upper mids and the high end. I like to control it dynamically by flattening out those dynamics rather than put a static cut in. Static cuts up there usually sound a little dull to me.
You say, what did you do?
Dynamic EQ is another very good approach, Jeffrey. Absolutely. So here we have the UAD. I notice a lot of people are using UAD, new SSL channel strip. And I've really been into channel strip workflow. I have a renewed love for it this summer. In our Next Level Mixing 2 class, we've been looking at all kinds of channel strips. The cool thing about a channel strip, obviously, is that lots of controls are all in one little place. And since a lot of these moves are quite interdependent, to be able to jump between them quickly, between the EQ, the filters, and the compression and the saturation, is quick. It's quick. So, Slate doesn't really have these channel strips, but you can use the virtual mix rack to create a channel strip. So everything you're seeing here, don't feel bad if you don't have this from UAD. You can make a channel strip, a really nice custom channel strip, and we have quite a few of those created at the school with Slate, which I think sounds, amazing. It's a little bit different. Waves as well, absolutely, 100% waves for sure. So this, it looks a little claustrophobic at first, and lots of knobs and little things written, and how in the world am I going to deal with this? But essentially, up top you have a saturation or a line mic preamp input. And these analog consoles, a lot of these, especially the newer ones, are modeled with the preamp saturation modeled. And you can drive these, just like Decapitator from Sound Toys, or driving any type of analog input, and you can generate really rich harmonics and hear sort of the amplifier stage of these consoles. So the first thing we're going to do, and you can use the line or the mic, and then if you use the mic, you can turn the transformer on and off. Today I'm using the line on this one. And you can, the first thing you do is sort of saturate it. Let's put a sound on it. Let's put that SSL sound on it. And let's see how the SSL interacts with this vocal. If we don't like it, we can try a Neve, we can try an API to just get a feel for, which pairing is working nicely with this particular vocal. So let's listen to the SSL saturation. And the way that you do that on these consoles is you turn down the clean output, which is down on the lower right, and you push the input from the line or the mic, whichever one you choose. So let's do a bit of that.
With him today, and you sniff me out like I was Tangeray. 'Cause you're my fellow, my guy.
And notice, it's the same engineering approach, even though I'm in a different phase of the channel stripping. I distort it on purpose. I want to see where it distorts and what it sounds like when it distorts. So we distort it right away. It might freak out somebody in the room sitting behind you. Be like, this guy distorts a lot of stuff. But that's how you do it. This way, right away what too much and too far is, and then you back it off and try to find the sweet spot. So let's just rewind that one more second. You can see that again. It's the same engineering technique flowing through all of the channel stripping.
Do with him today, and you sniff me out like I was Tangeray. 'Cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good.
Console color is very subtle, and yet it's very, very profound. And we love console color at the school, as everybody knows, on everything all the time. We're always putting console color. And I'd say the thing about console color, takes a little while for your ear to train your ear to hear it. But it adds a classy amplifier sound to everything. And it's very classy and it's very classic. And it's also accumulative, not as obvious sometimes as tape saturation or other kinds of saturation. but it adds a classiness to the sound. And then just to know as well, there's a different flavor of saturation on the fader. So you can work the two flavors in this SSL. You can drive it with the line or the mic, and then you can add another extra flavor by pushing that fader up as well. The rotary knob on the lower right is clean gain, so that's not actually going to do it. But be aware if you're using this plugin, there's two saturation sources there just with the amplification.
Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You said, what did you do with him today? And you sniffed me out like I was Tanqueray.
So I'm liking that SSL sound, but I say, well, it's bright, it's clear, it might be the winner, but we can try out a couple other consoles. And if you're a Slate person, the Virtual Console Collection, you can flick through the Neve, the SSL, the API, the Trident, the two SSLs, and do the exact same thing we're doing here, driving it. And the extra drive knob on the Slate is brilliant that they put that in there. So you can make things even more console-y if you want. So whatever we're doing here, if you're a Slate person, it should absolutely translate to the Virtual Console Collection. Is it a little different? Sure. But it's apples and apples. So here's a modern Neve, the 88. It's not a vintage Neve, not a 1073. But let's give it a little shootout with the SSL to see which one we prefer on this vocal.
Cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good. Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt.
And it has a nice sound, but it didn't make the same first impression like commercial brightness that the SSL did. And I love the 88. I use it all the time, but that's why it's fun to just explore your prejudices. It's part of the fun part of our mixing and mastering job is to, see which one of our toys or our gear is working on a given day in a given situation. And that's fun, right? So it didn't, I think I'm leaning on the SSL, but we'll do a quick little shoot.
Say, what did you do with him today? And you sniffed me out like I was Tanqueray. Cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door.
The SSL wins. It's got this commercial brightness. And again, there's no compression now. There's no EQ. There's no filters. It's just the saturation stage of the console. And for this particular vocal, I think I still like the SSL, but I had to try my 88. So let's see. We can try the API. Sometimes it's a little bit in between the two. But there's a brightness that I'm liking about the SSL.
You tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good.
You see us again, same thing, exaggerating, watching it distort, listening to the sound of the distortion, seeing where it is when it distorts. And the API is nice. It's sounding, sometimes I say it feels like it's in between the brightness of the SSL and the smoothness of the Neve. Sort of API lives a little bit in the middle. Trung likes it.
Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray. 'Cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore.
And I still, you could gate it. What's up, Ulysses? You could gate it for sure. It's not that noisy. And sometimes gates, unless they're really, they're called for, can kind of like be more distracting than helpful. It's not too noisy of a vocal that it's bothering me, and I think in the mix it's fine. So anyway, the SSL wins. We heard a little distortion on the loud part there, so we might have to do a little destructive gain move to those loud things, and which I'm never scared to do when I'm leveling out vocals. Is I love my compressors, but if there's one syllable or one thing that's just way too loud, I'll go in and do a destructive gain change that's pre-insert so that it plays nice with the preamp, saturation, and everything else. As opposed to automating it after the inserts, which wouldn't take away the distortion. When you do that kind of a move, level it out before any of the inserts.
Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray. 'Cause you're my fellow, my guy.
And there I'm adding that second kind of, second harmonic saturation from the fader. And it's a little bit of a thickener. I think it has a good, the first even harmonic pushes a little bit, which is typical of a output transformer. You get a lot of the first even harmonic, which is a nice fattener.
I cheated myself like I knew I would. And I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good.
Now, one of the coolest things here is just having these filters on these analog channel strips, which you don't have in Slate, but you could use that custom EQ and throw that in your virtual mix rack and use those filters, which I do when I'm in Slate land, and it actually works incredibly well. But it's so nice to have these really nice filters right in front of you just to take out extra highs and extra lows. And, just as we're religious about cutting our lows, we're also religious about cutting any extra highs to create a warm sound. And sometimes when I hear we do live feedback twice a week at the school online all over the world. And it's very apparent to me when people are not cutting enough high end. And that also accumulates. And you get a kind of a fizzy, bright, too much traffic up top thing where I wished in their channel stripping that they were just as diligent with the highs as they are with the lows. And it really makes quite a big difference, actually.
Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray. 'Cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore.
So a little bit of filtering of the lows, not too much of the highs on this one because it really just didn't need it. But on a lot of other sounds, it's so critical to cut the highs. This is a mono recording that lives on a stereo channel. And that's actually kind of a nice way to work. I gave up using stereo file formats and mono file formats and switching between them because it just drove me nuts. And a lot of the times on my mono tracks, I want to use a stereoizing effect. So even though this is a mono track, it's a mono vocal recording, it lives on a stereo file format. And that's what I recommend for most people. I know you could save a little bit of CPU and this and that and the other, but it just gets kind of annoying to jump between them. So it's perfectly mono, but it's on a stereo file format. So I can unlink the compressor because the left and the right channel here are identical. Now, a little bit about this compressor. There is no variable attack. You have regular attack, which I think is like 3 to 20 milliseconds, and it's program dependent. Or you could lock it in at 3 milliseconds with this little hiding button right above where it says peak. It's a little red light. But on vocals, if you have too fast of an attack, it can make things quite grabby. And it can sort of do some strange things to the vocal. So usually a vocal benefits from 1, 2, or 3 compressors with not too fast of an attack to keep the percussive sort of transient stuff in place. And sometimes 3 vocal compressors in a row, all doing a little bit of the work, works out a lot better than trying to nail it with 1 compressor. If anyone ever sat there trying to get, perfectly compress a vocal with 1 compressor and get frustrated, it usually just doesn't work. It's usually 2 or 3 sharing the burden that makes for a smooth, kind of transparent compression. So here we have variable ratio, we have our threshold, and we have a release as well. And we're on the, I guess, regular attack mode.
I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble.
See this now again, same technique, overdoing it, took that threshold and really yanked it for a second, just to be like, hey, is this on? But also just to hear what this compressor sounds like when it's working too hard. And it starts with a 5-to-1 ratio and a 12 o'clock sort of 600 millisecond release or something, but we'll play with those.
You know that I'm no good. Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt.
And for those who aren't familiar, the gain reduction is down below the green knobs on the left side where it says select. You can see gain reduction, and it's the little flickering yellow light, and we're doing around 3 dB of gain reduction.
You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray. 'Cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore.
Now, another interesting thing about these analog SSL compressors, API does it as well. They sort of have an auto gain. I mean, they do have an auto gain. And the ratios for vocals is usually between 2 and 4. And every once in a while with 1176 you can get away with higher ratios, but it's usually 2 or 3 compressors with ratios between 2 and 4. And there's other ways to do it, but that seems to work incredibly well. Gentle ratios. So anyway, this has auto gain, right? It has a little bit of analog auto gain. So as we pull down on the threshold, you'll notice that the overall signal doesn't really drop as dramatically as analog compressors without auto gain, which is quite a engineering feat that they can do that in the analog realm.
I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good. Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray.
So setting this compressor on the release, faster release, less compressed, longer release, more compressed, more gluey. And, it depends on the phrasing, all kinds of factors, and every compressor is a little bit different. But if you want it more glued together, you're going to go for slightly longer releases. And that will kind of keep the vocal a little more compressed and in one place.
'Cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good. Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray.
So this compressor is just doing a little bit of gentle leveling. I have no ambition that I'm going to get all of the compression done, but this is the first line of compression, the first line of gentle leveling. You see that I'm not killing it, I'm not smashing it, and a smash vocal can be great, but this is my first gentle leveling in the channel strip, and I'm using that little compressor in and out on the bottom to go in and out just to see if I like the effect.
'Cause you're my fellow, my guy.
Now, let's do a little bit of EQ as well, right? These EQs in these channel strips are beautiful, and they're, once you get the hang of it, they're quick and they're flexible. So one of the things we love about a commercial vocal is the brightness. The brightness psychoacoustically moves things into the front of the mix. And if you want to go see Beyonce sing, you want her to be in the center of the stage and in front, not standing behind the drummer. And so that brightness psychoacoustically will bring the vocal forward. And, the more you do do vocal mixing, you'll see vocals need to be pretty bright, actually. And you can be quite aggressive with the brightness as long as there's enough de-essing and compression so that it's not a pokey brightness, that it's a smooth, saturated brightness. So we have two choices up here with the high frequency. We can go shelf or bell, and they both can work. Sometimes a bell is more focused. Sometimes a shelf provides a lot of air. Again, it has a lot to do with the vocal recording, how clean the vocal is. So don't always just do a shelf or always just do a bell. Go experiment. Again, this is part of the fun. Part of the fun of our job is that we don't just force these certain, old habits on new material, but we sort of examine and see like what river we've stepped in, because you don't step in the same river twice. So we'll test the waters here with a shelf and a bell.
Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good. Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today?
And you can't bypass the individual bands, but you can bypass the whole EQ section there below. And it's a nice way to just, again, we're always looking for that contrast. Is it better? Did I make it better? So this is where you would bypass just the EQ, just like we did the compressor.
And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray, 'cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm out the door, you tear me down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I knew I would, and I told you I was trouble, and you know that I'm no good. Meet you downstairs in the bar and heard your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You say, what did you do with him today? And you sniff me out like I was Tanqueray.
While we're EQing here, we don't always know exactly what's going to sound good. So when we do additive EQ, and you can do reductive EQ here as well, it's pretty simple. You just add a boost, don't go too crazy, 3, 4 dB, something like this, and then sweep the frequencies and just listen. And you're going to find these beautiful little areas of the EQ spectrum that were like, wow, that's really flattering. But you also might find something that is not flattering, in which case, even though you're here in a additive EQ mode, by all means, you can cut it right here too. So this is a really nice sort of opportunity to enhance some different parts of the sound. But also, if you stumble upon something that is not attractive, even though we did a former instance of reductive EQ with FabFilter Pro Q2, we can also, do a little bit of sneak in a little reductive EQ here as well. All right, you guys, listen, I'm going to have to stop here. It's so hard to stop. I have all kinds of more stuff for you guys, de-essing and reverb and all that. But we keep these free webinars down to an hour. I want to thank everyone for coming. We'll email you if you'd like to watch this again. I feel like we have to do a part 2 for this one. Another 1 hour part 2. I'm not sure when in the summer schedule we'll be able to do that, but we'll always let you know and try to bring to you some good engineering mixing knowledge. But really, in conclusion, the things I think to take away from today is the reductive EQ, taking out some of the room resonances without overdoing it, and then finding your channel strip that you love, where you can filter, compress, EQ, and saturate all in one place. And it's going to be personal to you. And again, the third thing that I think to take away from today is just the engineering etiquette of finding the right answer. Go extreme, get close, make little moves, bypass, and jump between settings so that you can really fine tune on your taste. All right, everybody, listen, thank you, Mike Hooks, for putting this together. All the friends of the Academy, it's wonderful to see you. All new people, this is what we do. And we've been doing this for 2 years in this October, and we're the #1 school in the world for mixing and mastering, which is quite a wonderful honor. And our international community is, I think, the best. So anything you need from us, go to mixmasterwyatt.com. And we have a live chat that is always going. So if you have anything you need from us, we will help you on the live chat. And lots of self-study video courses. So, it's July, it's getting to be August. You could start watching instantly tonight. And if you get a video course every Monday from 4 to 5 Eastern, you can send in your works in progress. We'll play them live. For everyone who's at class, we'll talk about stuff, and you can also get your questions answered live for your video courses. So, okay, I'm so glad. Thank you so much. Great to see everybody. Great to meet new faces. Have a wonderful rest of your day and week, and we'll see you online. Cheers, everybody.